Okay, hello everyone and good afternoon. My name is Heman and I'm a research associate at South Asia Research Institute for Minorities. Today we have the Subhajit Naskar on our interview series. Let me introduce him. Subhajit Naskar is an assistant professor at the International Relations Department at Jodhpur University. He has been a vocal anti-caste voice and his research focuses on the caste discrimination Bhadralok culture in Bengali society. His field of specialization is South Asia politics, debate on secularism, communalism in India, and politics of Muslim minority in India, Dalit politics in contemporary India, role of political Islam in Pakistan, and domestic politics in Pakistan, reference to army. So let's dive into the questions. My first question is Subhajit is what has inspired you to become just for persecuted minorities, is this motivation enough to keep you working for the right of Dalits into the mainstream society?
Well, Heman, thank you so much. And my profound thanks to South Asia Research Institute for Minorities, SARIM, and of course, Dr. Khuram, the convener of SARIM, for doing this and for organizing many such exclusive interviews here. And SARIM has been pioneering this entire anti-caste talk across South Asia, and of course this is the second time I'm being invited, and the kind of warmth and love that is being put forth to put together anti-caste voices across the South Asia by SARIM is absolutely commendable. So now the question that you are asking me is of course anti-caste activism, or maybe talking for the margins or the marginalized, especially in India, and of course this whole of the subcontinent, uh, is quite a very new kind of phenomena in my life. I come from a state where this whole anti-caste discussion has gained has never gained so much strength the way it has today. Even across the country, if you look at India, and of course across South Asia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, the hegemonic discussions, the hegemonic discourses are so strong, which is basically led uh, by the upper class forces, or their kind of hegemony. The way it's so deep rooted that the voices from the margin was basically unheard of, and their humiliations, their trauma, their experiences, everyday experiences, were never basically being articulated, or never been given a space. But of course, thanks to the anti-caste icons in this whole of subcontinent, right from Dr. Ambedkar, Mr. Jogen Mondal, in fact, Periyar, and Jyotirao Phule, Savitribai Phule, and others, that these their writings, their perspectives were basically never I mean, there were never lights that was said on their lives, which is why millions of marginalized in this part of the world, which is South Asia, let's say now, were basically, swept under the carpet. Now, coming back to the question of how I got motivated, so I have been basically Dr. Ambedkar and anti-caste literature, and other anti-caste discussions. Those basically challenge the hegemonic narratives. They are being introduced to me quite late, towards 2016-17, and the more I read about the trauma, the humiliation, and and the belonginglessness of marginalized in the South Asian subcontinent basically baffled me. And then I was basically pursuing happily international relations, but then I thought that international relations in South Asia is basically a very manufactured fuss, where they basically create binaries like global south, global north, but never basically digs deeper into the global south, because global south again is not a is again a very post-colonial kind of narrative to basically homogenize the heterogeneous communities that live in South Asia, or in the in post-colonial countries, especially in the countries of Asia and Africa. So I thought that even to do justice to the studies of IR, international relations, and to do the justice to even studying domestic politics, we basically need to talk about caste, and how caste as a very evil, uh, graded, dehumanized structure that regularly basically pushes the marginalized to the margin. And this has basically largely been my motivating force, which is where I had uh, started pursuing uh, mm, anti-caste discussions and discourses in the classrooms, in my own life, and in my friend circles, and so on and so forth.
My next question is, since 2019, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused extensive damage to the South Asia underprivileged communities. As a result of outbreak, countless people, including minorities and underprivileged communities members, especially Dalit, lost their jobs. What are the major health-related suffering of marginalized communities?
This whole COVID-19 narrative again is again has created so much of exclusion, and it has basically acted as an enabler for the already traumatized and suffered and dehumanized, marginalized communities like Dalits, even Muslims of the subcontinent, and especially Muslims. Those are on the lower rung uh, of the social strata. And this has been COVID-19's entire narrative, the way it has been put forth across the world. There has been a uh, mm, they came up with the idea of social distancing, which is again very problematic for marginalized. Those have basically suffered distancing because of this purity and pollution, the idea of purity and pollution, that certain castes in the Hindu Varna system, those are upper castes, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, they are very pure, and Dalits and untouchables, they are not, they are polluted. So, and that is why the Dalits and untouchables, the ex-untouchables, the Dalits, those are now scheduled castes in this part of the world. They have to go through a social distancing within the society, to which basically amplified. So that kind of idea basically is being brought back by COVID-19. And thanks to WHO and other or agencies, that later on they said that COVID-19 is not about social distancing, it's about physical distancing from two COVID affected persons. So so these kind of COVID-19 has basically pampered the sensibilities of the privileged castes, class, and religious communities. Those basically are least affected, in fact. But the people in this subcontinent, those basically are migrant workers, interstate migrant workers, uh, or those are daily wage earners, in fact, the workers at the site of constructions and things like that. So they have lost the job overnight because of COVID-19. Uh, and since they earn their livelihoods on daily basis, and their livelihoods basically are sort of are based on the daily earnings, so they found completely unemployed and jobless. Even today there are millions of migrant workers, millions of vegetable sellers, or millions of daily wage earners across the South Asian subcontinent, not only in India, but I'm sure in Pakistan also. I have seen that there was Prime Minister's special financial transfer, or giving some financial help. That kind of scheme was there. Probably Mrs. Sania Nistar is the one who basically pursues that program. So that, and in fact in India that program was run, but these are not very sustainable programs. Even in Bangladesh it happened. They tried to do something. There were huge COVID-19 relief package, but that could not basically address the real problem of marginality. The real problem of marginality in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh lie basically in the uh, uh, centuries and centuries of unequal distribution of the wealth, and that needs to be basically systematically eradicated, because the more these countries have become democratic, or the more they strived to become democratic, they have been this gap of inequality, the gap between the rich and poor. The poor, of course, in this country have an identity, and they are the marginalized castes, the Dalits, the Adivasis, and the backward castes, and even the religious groups like the lower rung Muslims in the social strata, other indigenous groups, ethnic groups. So they are the ones, those basically do not have much voice in the institutional circles, which is why their urge for to make their voices heard in the corridors of power is basically is a distant dream, which is why in India particularly, from my own experiences, I have seen that how this COVID-19 pandemic has basically amplified untouchability. There are a number of cases where it is being heard that the upper caste kids, they refuse to eat foods cooked by the Dalit cooks, or in some places it is being heard that wherever there were Dalit household helps, those who are employed, they are being told to sort of leave the job, because if they enter into those houses they can bring COVID-19 virus, but which is not true. This entire COVID-19 pandemic, as this we have seen through it, that it is basically being brought by the upper class and privileged people, and it is not the poor people. Poor people are the sufferers of the deeds committed by the privileged people. uh, mm, so and they have become the carriers of COVID-19 pandemic, and poor people have been the sufferers of the restriction measures, those being uh, uh, sort of imposed by the government and by various non-government organizations and others, the private institutions. So they said that I mean, they had to cut a lot of stops in terms of sort of lessening the burden of giving salaries and things like that. But the bigger point that COVID-19, the bigger thing that COVID-19 pandemic has done, that it has basically changed the way uh, these Dalits, Adivasis, the lower castes, lower classes, they used to sort of live in this part of the world, especially those are basically developing and kind of underdeveloped countries. So their livelihoods are being destroyed very, very silently. Their entire structure of living is being basically destroyed because of COVID-19 pandemic, because of the inhuman restriction measures being imposed in terms of sort of arresting the growth of COVID-19 virus, the COVID virus. And even today, when there is this latest module of COVID-19 virus, Omicron has come up. The again there is some kind of restrictions that is being put up, but the problem in the South Asian countries is that we have a very, very underfunded healthcare system, and and a vertical healthcare system, rather, let's say. Because of the underfunded healthcare, there is a vertical because system of healthcare, which is why the millions of poor, the Adivasis, the poverty stricken, the lower class, the lower castes, the Muslims, they do not have the luxury to sort of get themselves admitted in a private hospital, which is private super specialty hospital. So they basically still rely on the private hospital, the public hospital, the government funded hospitals, and which is basically the kind of government hospitals that exist in South Asia, in India, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh. It's basically kind of it's not up to the mark. So there are these people, those basically do not have the insurance, the private insurance, to get themselves treated for COVID-19 in private hospitals. So they basically come to the public institutions, the public run or the government run hospitals, but the options are very less, so they basically die like the way they used to die. So COVID-19 pandemic has basically amplified their mortality, their kind of agony in their lives.
So my third question is, what kind of discrimination are being faced by Dalits, particularly by the Dalit regularly in India, and what role are the Dalit right organizations play to encounter this growing stance?
Dalit organizations are kind of in India right now, they are very vocal in terms of addressing the issues of Dalit marginality. But that is again not enough for this dominant caste captured institutional the people, those are basically hegemonized the institutions of in the government and otherwise. So there are many there are Dalit women's organizations, there are Safai Karmachari Andolan by Bijwara Wilson and others. Those are basically trying to negotiate, or let's say trying to tell the government to give better infrastructure in terms of cleaning the roads and others. I mean, because the government is still basically using the Dalits for manual scavenging jobs, and Dalits do not have any other option, but they just die in the manholes when they go down to clean the manholes. And there have been ample number of incidents very recently in Mumbai. The Bombay Municipal Corporation, they have when they were told that there is a manhole which is basically open and things like that, so they put up a picture by saying that, now look, we have somebody here cleaning the manhole. So these kind of, and these are very, very rich, financially very, very rich municipal corporations, and still they use Dalits as I mean, to go down to the manholes or for manual scavenging jobs. So On the other hand, in this whole during the COVID-19 period, and in fact earlier, there have been, especially in the COVID-19, there have been rapes of Dalit women in Uttar Pradesh, in Hathras, in Uttar Pradesh's Unnao, and it is being reported that as many as 7 Dalit women are being raped or sexually harassed every day, or let's say raped. These are Dalit women in India. And Uttar Pradesh is, Thomson Reuters survey has said that Uttar Pradesh is a nightmare for the women. So that is the report. So and so in terms of providing security to the uh, uh, to the Dalits, to the Dalit women, to the Dalits as a whole, Dalit karmacharis and Dalit workers in various sectors. There have been a number of Dalit organizations; those are basically working day in and day out. But the biggest problem that remains is that uh, uh, the political structures and the political administrative structures are basically being hegemonized by the upper castes, or the, let's say, caste Hindus, which is why mm, these particular Dalit organizations of the civil rights, or Dalit civil rights organizations, Dalit Women's Fight, and others, they basically their demands are really being met. And in terms of justice, when it comes to giving justice to the Dalits, uh, uh, it is basically really they get justice in terms of whether it's a rape cases in Uttar Pradesh, in other places, uh, in Rajasthan, in Madhya Pradesh. There are in the COVID-19 pandemic period, there have been lots of the Dalit teachers and professors. They have faced with discrimination from the upper caste. They are there have been many cases from the state where I come from, West Bengal. There have been cases where online trolling has happened against the Dalit Adivasi professors. They have been the victims of it. So, but it needs to go basically needs to walk a long way for the Dalit organizations. And this is not only the Dalit organizations, the upper castes, the caste Hindus need to basically come forward to address this problem. Basically, this marginality and the caste problem is not a Dalit problem, it's an upper caste problem, because this is their creation and Dalits are merely the victims of it.
Earlier this morning, I was reading an article and I read there that we see Dalits in South Asia and similarly affected groups elsewhere. They are generally much poorer than the average population. Their rights are not protected nor respected. And the universal principle of non-discrimination, dignity, and equality are far from described to reality. So, my next question is what do you think the major key factors propelling the unfortunate rise in minority victimization in South Asia are? And what significant suggestion do you have to deal with them?
Okay, yeah, again, this is a very important question. The minorities, um, um, of course, have been the biggest victim. But today, if you look at the Muslim women in India, they are being hounded. Or their pictures are being auctioned in the name of Sulli deals. You know, their bodies are being sexualized, just like the Dalit women's bodies are being sexualized. Yasika Dutt and others have written about it. So today there have been cases and charges have been pursued by the Mumbai police that many a prominent Dalit Muslim women, in fact, even Dalit women, not Dalit women, but in this case, Muslim women, they are being auctioned on an app called Sulli app, or Bully Buy app. So this is a kind of horrendous minority witch hunting that is basically going on. And some of these culprits, those are being arrested in the last few days by Mumbai police, are basically the upper castes, the caste Hindus, namely Vishal Jha and one teenage lady called Seta Singh, and Ritesh Jha, another guy. So these are upper caste people. So they got the, I mean, so when you talk about even Muslim issues, the problem that these Muslims in fact think that Hindus are homogeneous, it's a Hindu Muslim problem, but it's basically Hindus, it's basically upper caste problem. It's basically a caste problem that Muslims also need to address in this subcontinent and across the world wherever there are Hindus. Because caste has become a global problem as Hindus have traveled across the world. So the caste Hindus especially, so the upper castes, as Dr. Ambedkar would say. So and the minorities, just like the Dalits, have been also biggest victims in India in the last. Not only it has basically increased in the last few years, but it was always there. The minority, the victimizing the minorities, the targeting minorities for their identities, have been I mean, have always been on the rise. It has, and any government that has basically was in power, they never tried to basically robustly address. They never tried to robustly address the issue. They basically responded whenever there were cases against the cases of witch hunting the minorities and the communal violence, riots. So this entire issue of Muslims need to be addressed in a very, very robust manner. There needs to be some kind of system that needs to be put in place to address this deeper rot that exists, and this whole of the problem in a majority minority framework of any country. The majorities always try to sort of victimize the minorities, whether it's and they try to sort of otherize, they try to sort of push them through the margin further, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's Pakistan, or whether it's India. And especially in the case of India, it has even the whether it's the BJP or it's the non-BJP parties. I do not draw any distinction here, because none of these parties, let's say all of these parties have basically failed the minorities of India. They never sort of tried to come up with a solid plan where through which the minorities feel kind of feel at home, or minorities feel that their agencies are being safeguarded by the government and by the people in the corridor of power. So so the Muslims, in fact, or the minorities, they are being regularly attacked. The churches are being attacked, the mosques are being attacked. Muslims wanted to pray, offer namaz, so that is also being attacked. So these kind of incidents, they have not been happening. It is merely being reported today more and more, but it has been happening since quite long. And the biggest problem is that Muslims are being attacked for their culture, their food habits, their their cult, their kind of the way they appear. So for all of these reasons, they are being attacked, and to basically to sort of ensure a kind of Hindutva revivalism. So, but again, I would say that it is in the whole framework of religion, which basically creates this whole problem that basically needs to be interrogated. and which is where we are basically lacking. There are many liberals, those basically talk about respond to the minority problems as and when there are minorities are attacked by the majority. But there are rarely anyone those would be talking about a systematic framework which will address this, or which will give a solution to the whole problem of minority witch hunting, communal violence, and how to basically bring the perpetrators to the book very, very quickly.
Can people who grew up in India generally tell what caste someone belongs to by looking at him or her? Are there physical qualities that suggest a person's caste? Or would you have to learn the person's surname or the other information about him or her to know? If there are no physical traits, perhaps with education and migration, the caste system could disappear within a few generations. What do you think?
Well, uh, mm, mm, whether it's the physical appearance, or it's basically it's the mental sickness of the caste Hindus that basically uh, that is at the core of this whole identification of that somebody is a Dalit, in terms of their surname, in terms of their appearance, in terms of so. It's not basically only appearance, but basically it's the it's in the name, because but there have been attempts where it is being tried to to address that if surnames are removed and only the name remains, the problem can go away. But the entire Brahminical upper caste mindset basically never goes away. They basically still kind of would like to keep their spaces, or the largest amount of space for themselves, and would like to sort of spare a very, very small space of to the lower castes and the Dalits, Adivasis, and in fact the minorities in this part of the world. So this mental sickness has, the more we have come off edges, the more it has basically outgrown in India, in fact, and that is why the Dalits have been suffering more today than earlier, and it's very, very systematic suffering. It's very, very subtle now. It's not like earlier, the way there have been physical violences, there have been physical untouchabilities, but there is today, even now, in various places there are reports, but in as far as the contemporary period is concerned, the Dalits are basically witnessing a new form of social exclusion. Okay, and this is basically done through their social identity, which is Dalits. Very recently, some of the Indian universities have been accused of profiling the students and the research scholars on the basis of their caste, and that is how they are being discriminated on the at the interview boards, or by the interview boards. Those are basically full of upper caste interviewers. And there have been there's an article where it is basically said, I teach in a university which is which is a publicly funded university, where there have been many cases where there is caste-based profiling of the students and research scholars at the interview boards. Those are basically predominantly made up of the upper caste professors, or the dominant caste, or the Brahmins, professors. So so what we need is that there must be a strict implementation of affirmative actions, and we need to implement reservation in the private sector as well, because day by day the governments are or the Brahmins and upper caste, those are in the corridors of power, they are trying to sort of uh, sell out the publicly funded institutes or universities or sectors, public funded sectors, to the private entities. And this is a great danger, because once the private, and this is a very very well structured plan by the many upper caste people, that the more these government organizations get shrunk, there is no constitutional responsibility to follow the reservation or the affirmative action methods, or or to sort of implement affirmative actions, in this case the reservation in this in India, which is basically a constitutional mandate, and no public institution can basically deny it, if otherwise it becomes a legal issue. So there is a very very shrewd way of sort of privatize the government institutions in the name of more bringing more efficiency. And this is again a very very problematic ploy that is being employed by the upper caste in the various institutions that they have basically hegemonized. So the more affirmative actions, the reservation in the private sector is the urgent need because the government sector has become as less as not even something like 7%, 10-15%. Rest of them are all private entities, private enterprises. So and in this entire South Asian countries, whether it's India, Pakistan, and other places, the government is on the daily basis, they are basically sort of committed to expand the private sector and not the public sector, which is very very problematic. And every day or the other, you would be hearing that the private players, they are coming into various sectors, into road construction, into education, into agriculture, into industry, into everything. And government is very very happily giving away the lands, giving away the tax benefits and everything to these players, while the government institutions are basically the spaces of the government institutions are getting shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. So and this is the danger for the Dalits and the lower caste, lower class minorities, especially the social rung, the lower social rung Muslims, that they will not be, they will after a point, they will not find themselves in the private sectors. They will basically be out of the entire institutional structure, and they will be ending up as just migrant workers, daily wage earners, and things like that. So I feel that the affirmative action policies like reservation and safeguards for the ensuring the representation of the lower caste, lower class people needs to be ensured in the private sector as well. The government needs to basically bring laws, rules, and regulations to implement affirmative policies in the private sector. Otherwise, this entire the livelihood of the Dalits and other marginalized castes will be basically destroyed very very soon.
Subhajit, I was watching Yashka the interview where she quoted that India is the vast majority of South Asia's Dalit. About the fifth population, caste discrimination is highly politicized and a sensitive issue in India. Despite a constitutional safeguard and special education for the protection of Dalit, violation of fundamental human rights occur on a massive scale. My next question is a social activist fighting for Dalit rights in India and other regions. What are the most significant barriers you have been experiencing? And how do you deal with such a hindrance at work? What are your social work in uplifting for Dalits?
Those of us are basically every day voicing our opinions and trying to assert our rights and our concerns and our everyday experiences of marginality and trauma, humiliation. They are basically faced with this upper caste wrath, the upper caste's anger, because the upper caste basically do not want to leave their space that they have basically hegemonized or they are gatekeeping. So these dominant castes, Brahmins and others, they have basically created a whole kind of sort of network where uh, and which is very much get kept and very much kept in such a way where Dalits, Adivasis, and other backward castes can never enter into that framework. And we have been regularly trolled. We are basically, we live, even though Dalits have progressed a bit, but still the kind of intellectual ambience or the intellectual let's say right or space that the upper caste enjoy in various spaces, various sectors, the Dalits and other lower castes, they do not enjoy that. We have to think 1,000 times before uttering a word. We have to basically, because whether it's judiciary, whether it's academia, whether it's bureaucracy, whether it's various IIT in technological institutes or media, in fact, civil societies, social media, everywhere the upper caste narratives are, and the upper castes are basically or the dominant caste Hindus, they basically uh, set the parameter for anything and everything, and which is where we basically we need to be very cautious, because if you look at the kind of cases that is being with which the Dalits are being booked for voicing the opinions, and the kind of time frame that they stay in the language in the jails, which is very harrowing in terms of other castes. There are reports, and it is a fact that even Dalits have to go through same kind of untouchability, the same kind of casteism in the prison also. There is a brilliant journalist called Sukwana Shantha. She has exposed it in the where.in. That how casteism is being practiced even in prisons. So caste in prisons, which is Pulitzer funded expose. But the problem remains that in media, in fact, the media, Indian media, is again being hegemonized by the upper caste. There are very in terms of the panelists, in terms of the editorial positions, in terms of anchors, everywhere there is this upper caste and Brahminical dominance, the upper Brahmins dominance, and the Dalits, or in fact Adivasis, they do not find them. So they are not being basically taken or given that kind of decision making or policy making posts, which basically this sets the narrative. In fact, in judiciary, there is rarely any representation, and which is why even in educational institutes. So, in Dalits, Adivasis, and lower caste at large, they face they basically are kind of second class citizens. They basically have to think 1,000 times before sort of voicing their opinions. But when it comes to upper caste, the kind of caste impunity that they enjoy because of their caste networks across the sectors, they just do not care before voicing any opinion. So they have that kind of caste privilege that that Dalits and other lower caste do not enjoy. in India and wherever the caste Hindus basically are.
That's really interesting to know. You know, Brahminical culture is at the core of violence against women, particularly Dalit women. Manu's code directs how women should act and how their body should be controlled. Violence is emerging as a result of socio-cultural factors. How do you feel about it?
Well, Manu's codes and Manu's Smriti, which is one of the kind of Hindu so-called sacred text, it basically dehumanizes not only Dalits but women as well. It's a complete misogynistic and patriarchal text, which is why Dr. Ambedkar, the founding father of the Indian Constitution, and I mean legendary social democrat, he basically has burned Manusmriti with other people, other followers of him, and very recently we have basically again celebrated Manusmriti Dahan Divas, that Manusmriti burning day, which is 25th of December. And Manusmriti is basically responsible for caste system in India, kind of, and that is why in protest Dr. Ambedkar burned Manusmriti, on 25th December of 1927. So this and Manusmriti Dahan Divas, the Manusmriti burning day, is very, very relevant even today, precisely because uh, Manusmriti is a kind of a symbol which basically gives a religious legitimacy to this whole idea of untouchability. Okay, and that is why Dr. Ambedkar very, very prominently said that you must destroy the religion of the Shrutis and Smrutis, and nothing else will avail. Hinduism is a veritable chamber of horrors, and it must die for caste to vanish. I believe in religion of liberty, equality, and fraternity. And remember that Dr. Ambedkar later on basically got converted to Buddhism, and he found that Buddhism is the only egalitarian religion, and that is why he sort of got converted into Buddhism. Now the Manusmriti Dahan Divas is celebrated more and more even today. After kind of close to 90 years or more of its burning, but uh, and Dr. Ambedkar has addressed in the masses before this Manusmriti, the day during this Mahar Satyagraha. He says that let's destroy the authority of ancient Hindu scriptures that are born in inequality. Religion and slavery are not compatible. That means the Hindu religions, which basically enslaved Dalits. Okay. And in fact, Dr. Ambedkar's one of prominent associate, Bapu Sahib Sahasrabuddhe, said, even though I am born, who himself was a Brahmin, who said that even though I am born as a Brahmin, but I condemn the doctrines of Manusmriti, and it is a symbol not of religion but of inequality, cruelty and injustice. So he said that I move a resolution that the Manusmriti, which has been the cause of sufferings for generations, should be publicly burned. And on the same day at 9 p.m. that night, the book was burned at the hands of Bapu Sahib Sahasrabuddhe, who was a Brahmin himself, and other 6 Dalit sadhus. So these three people, those who are there, during the Manusmriti Dahan Divas. Manusmriti basically prescribes very, very horrible things. It says in one of the plays, Manusmriti says that since women is not capable of living independently, to be kept under the custody of her father as a child, under her husband as a woman, and under her son as a widow. So this is the kind of, women are being told to to be always under a control of a man. That kind of patriarchal idea Manusmriti promotes. Even Manusmriti says that it is the duty of all husbands to exert total control over their wives. Even physically weak husbands must strive to control their wives. So this is the kind of the patriarchal values that Manusmriti promoted, and these are Manusmriti kind of scriptures are solely responsible for upper caste violence on Dalits, and especially the upper caste men's violence on Dalit women. And upper caste men basically look at Dalit women's body as a site of pleasure, as a site of just to enjoy, and for the not for any matrimonial alliances, or not for any romantic love, but just for bodily love, and bodily pleasure.
It is very evident that studies of Dalit women present clear evidence of widespread exploitation, violence, and incident in human tolerance. My next question is it's quite long. Violence against Dalit women is based on both gender and caste. Dalit women face targeted violence, including rape and murder, by state actors or the powerful members of dominant caste, used to inflict political lessons and the crush dissents within the community. According to the UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, the 60% of Dalit women experience family or other gender-based violence, whether physical, sexual, psychological, social, or cultural. What steps need to be taken to encounter violence against Dalit women?
There is no special thing that needs to be, that can be suggested here, but of course the Dalit women's problem, and I feel very ashamed to talk on behalf of Dalit women, but it is entirely, I mean, we the men, especially the Dalit men and any men, they need to be in solidarity with the Dalit women's fight. But still, as a man who comes from, as a person who comes from a marginalized caste, uh, uh, personally thinks that Dalit women's fight, Dalit women's basically have been resisting the upper caste cruelty, the upper caste, the Brahminical patriarchy that is basically dehumanize Dalit women and Dalit women's body as very, very not only for bodily pleasure, but as some kind of very, very polluted space, not worthy of so-called romantic love and things like that. So so these kind of mentalities are mental sickness of the upper caste Hindus and Brahmins, can basically can never be dealt with any government mechanism. I think what it needs to be that the upper caste needs to humanize them. The caste Hindus need to be humanized themselves to basically to learn civility, to respect rather the values of civility, because what has happened over the years and over the probably centuries, that the Dalit women have been victims in the hands of upper caste men. They are being regularly raped and sexually harassed with the Brahminical impunity, with the caste impunity, because they have the caste networks everywhere, because they think that if they get some kind of legally, if they are being legally challenged, they can just basically get away very easily, and which is why I feel mm, uh, that government should not only sort of bring about measures to kind of empower Dalit women through scholarships, through more and more funding for Dalit women's, like, not from a very, very early age, they should be funded for their schooling, for their college, for their university, and if they want to pursue higher education and things like that.
We particularly see in India, Dalit women are also subjected to the discrimination based on a specific social custom and religion practices. We can see that. And including we can say, call them Devi Dasi and Jogni system of the forced prosecutions in India, probably.
So my next question is, can you please tell us about the marshals? What kind of health services or welfare program does the government provide for marshals or Dalits people? Because they are the most underprivileged people in the society.
Well, the Musahars again are again very, very in the basically they are I mean, let's say Mahadalit kind of structure. They are mostly found. They are in Bihar. Uh, you know. Those are this Musahar is basically rat eaters. That is how it is being said, and they are basically from the eastern Gangetic plain. Okay, so these Musahars are amongst the poorest of the scheduled castes, yeah, and their deprivation is harrowing. Okay, so what I basically feel is that the socioeconomic conditions of Musahars, are basically, uh, as I said, this population is concentrated in Bihar, Jharkhand, and some parts of Bihar, some parts of Jharkhand, and some parts of Madhya Pradesh. So, they have been suffering extremely, right from birth till death, and government has never been cognizant of this kind of persistent indignity, let's say indignity, with which this entire community has to live. Though there are constitutional provisions that basically bans this, but still, uh, the kind of life of deprivation that basically is the order of the day among the Musahars. Those are the poorest Dalits. Those are basically called as quote unquote rat eaters. So it is the basically failure of the government and the upper caste politicians, the Brahmins. Those basically rule. Even the other, let's say, community, the upper caste communities, those basically are in various, those are basically running the various structures of the government. They have failed Musahars, in whether it's in Jharkhand, whether it's in Bihar, or in Madhya Pradesh, and this is very, very problematic, because there have been some kind of Dalit political leaders. Those basically have emerged, but they are not basically given agencies to basically to talk about their own community. So it's just the tokenism that has been political tokenism that is being done with them, with the even the political. So the leaders, those have basically so far have come from the Musahar community. So Musahars are still even in the same dark, the way they have always been. And the no none of the political party have basically been concerned about their depravity and deprivations.
So, as you said, there is a very thin line between the Dalits and Moishers. Dalits and Moishers are subjected to the violent attacks, murder, harassment, caste discrimination, and the burning of villages and other form of atrocities on a daily and sometimes on a systematic basis. My next question is, what are the UN recommendation on widely emerging caste-based discrimination, and also what are your endorsement on the caste-related violence?
UN have so far been, some of the UN rights experts have given calls for stronger protection for victims of caste discrimination and things like that. And there have been UN reports, on caste discrimination, and there you would remember that there was a time when United Nations Human Rights Council special rapporteur for minority issues has basically came up, with a with this 20-page document where it's basically it basically sort of made a number of factual references of the plight of Dalits and other lower castes in India. Okay, so that the report even highlighted sort of during this political tension when there was this Hyderabad University research scholar Rohit Vemula controversy was happening. So this whole report of UN report here basically created huge uh, uh, problem, sort of, let's say, uh, mm, in the circles of the government, because the United Nations is the IGO, intergovernmental organizations, and it is not binding upon their reports, and their recommendations are not binding upon the sovereign countries or the sovereign nations, and which is why sovereign countries like India and any other country, they basically, the India basically got irked with the report, and they thought that United Nations is basically this report is factually incorrect, and they cried foul over it. But the United Nations, I would rather say that the United Nations General Secretary should take note of the whole Dalits plights and the caste discrimination, and United Nations basically should include in its should make a global resolution at the United Nations General Assembly that how caste is at par with race, because the government, the upper caste and Brahmins in various, those are very influential in various sectors, they basically have thwarted this plan. There was a time when there was an attempt by the United Nations at the Urban Summit. It was made that the caste will be recognized as a discriminatory mechanism at par with race, but then a lot of these government authorities, they basically suppressed that attempt, and so it did not happen. But thanks to many Ivy League universities in America, like Harvard, like University of California and others, they are recognizing it. But United Nations needs to make it a global issue. United Nations Secretary, none other than the United Nations Secretary General, needs to take it up at his personal capacity, and to address this issue, and to sort of force all the powerful the P5 members to basically acknowledge that caste exists, and the caste-based profilings and the caste-based discriminations. The mechanism should be there in every country across the world to sort of deal with caste-based profiling, discrimination of Dalits and lower caste Hindus. Why United Nations needs to do a lot. It hasn't. I mean, it has done some of its experts and reporters, but United Nations largely hasn't done much.
Yes, caste is the very sensitive topic, and the discrimination also is a sensitive, very sensitive topic. These needs to be addressed very correctly. My next question is, why do the Dalits seek your assistance, and why should members of European Parliament be concerned about discrimination against minority and caste violence?
As far as my own experiences go, that I have lived through caste discrimination, and I've seen my friends, those are minorities and other Dalit friends and Adivasis, they have been regularly otherized in the upper caste networks and in the upper caste circles. So and the dominant castes, but I'm glad that there have been a lot of upper castes. They are basically coming forward. The Brahmins and Brahmin intellectuals, they are basically very, though the number is very few, but they are coming forward and taking up this issue, taking up the cause, and standing with the Dalits and minorities uh, in holding hands and committing themselves in anti-caste activism. So, but my experiences have been very, very baffling. It's been, and Dalits have basically from the birth to the death, and they keep on experiencing this otherization, this humiliation, this trauma, and it never goes. But well, it needs to be basically addressed, as I said, by the upper caste. The upper castes are not adequately addressing it. They are rather every day inventing newer mechanism to sort of get keep the upper caste spaces and to otherize the lower caste.
Thank you for sharing your experience, Subhajit. Um, this is my favorite question. Why is caste census needed? What is the significance and why may it not see the light of a day? What is the significance of census approach toward the caste identity and the aspiration in India?
Well, caste census is again is this demand for caste census basically goes beyond politics, and it should go beyond politics uh, because there have been there have been and the central government is of course opposing. So my whole point is that uh, uh, that these upper castes regularly troll Dalits and other lower castes for availing reservation, and says that reservation has been discriminating upper castes and Brahmins. But once and but on the other hand, the reality is that all the bigger positions and all of these important positions are being held by the upper castes. So reservation is not only being implemented, but the caste system has outgrown, has been on the rise every day. So the caste census would basically let's say will basically bring to the light the reality of the kind of social positions of the upper castes and the lower castes in various institutional spaces of the government, and in the and the overall the socio-economic situations, and which is why it is not being the government is very, very adamant in terms of doing it right. So and that is why caste census is basically the need of hour, because it will tell us that how there is a report by the Oxfam very recently in the year 2020, which says the top 10% of Indian population owns 74.3% of the total wealth, while the middle 40% and the bottom 50% owns only 20. The middle 40% owns 22.9% of the wealth, and 50%, the bottom 50%, those are Dalits and Adivasis basically, those are at the bottom, they merely own only 2.8%, which is again this is a completely caste based inequality in the Indian society. As you know, that Indian society is basically stratified on the basis of caste. So we need to basically look into the caste-based composition of the top 10%. Who are these top 10%? Those are, of the Indian population. Those are holding 74% of the total Indian wealth. So this once the caste census, and this is the Brahmin Baniya, the upper caste, they basically hold all the wealth. So once the caste census is done, so these 10% Indian population, those own 74% of the total wealth, it will be clear. And who are there in the top 50, bottom 50%, those who own only meagerly 2.8% of the wealth. So it will be very, very clear for everyone once caste based census uh, mm, uh, mm, is out, or it's done. Even there is a paper, that is a world inequality database, in a paper which is titled Wealth Inequality, Class and Caste in India, which did a study from 1961 to 2012, which was published in 2018. The paper basically has made, has done some great observation. This is basically done by somebody called Nitin Kumar Bharti. It's in Paris School of Economics, in the name of World Inequality Lab. So this basically suggests that that paper, which was published in 2018, the paper says that the average household income in India was rupees something like 113. And among upper caste groups, like Brahmins earned 48% above the national average, while the non-Brahmin upper caste earned 45%. On the other hand, scheduled tribe and scheduled caste earned 34%, and 21% less than the national average, of the earning. OBC groups earned 8% less than the national average. Remember, the Dalits have earned 34% less than the national average, which is very, very, I mean, this is baffling. Even that same paper says that in matters of wealth ownership, okay, 50% of the Brahmin, 31% of the Rajputs, 44% of Baniya, and 57% of castes, they fall in richest category. And for other caste groups, especially the Dalits and Adivasis, only 10% of Dalits, only 5% of Adivasis, those are tribals, they fall in richest category. So only 5 and 10%, while Brahmins are 50%, though Brahmins population is very 5% to 6%. So even the Dalit communities in India, they own 7 to 8% of total wealth, which is 11 percentage point less than their population share. So these are the kind of reality that exists in the in the Indian society, and which is why there is there is this advocacy for caste census, and which is why the caste census will reveal the reality of the Indian society, that who is amassing all the wealth, and who are at the who are at the receiving end, and who are at the gaining end.
Subhajit, while drafting the census question, I came to know there the caste constitution around 167 million people. However, the actual number is more closer to the 200 million. The official census does not include Dalits who have converted, born, or raised within non-Hindu religion community. It's just about the Hindus. My next question is: have you been to South Asia? And will you be visiting Pakistan? Would you like to come to the conference in future?
Well, I have friends in in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Nepal and Sri Lanka, Bhutan, across the country. I know. I mean, this very question is again. Look at this. That mm, uh, I mean, nobody who would be interviewing from America would need to ask this question. But whereas we, when an Indian interviews a Pakistani or a Pakistan interviews interviews an Indian, they just need to ask this question, and that is the kind of saddest reality that we have created in this part of the world. That this South Asia is basically today. Uh, I mean, has to be has to create more possibilities for more generating more human resources and more collaborating works and things like that. But the bigotry, the hatred, the anti-Muslim mindset, or maybe this entire hegemonic uh, kind of narrative that basically goes into this conversation, that and there are barriers being created, and the ones those basically this military based narrative that is being created. On the one hand, that one ISI chief and another RAW chief, they can write our books together, but which is what happened very recently. Somebody like Asad Durrani and our AS Dulat, they both jointly written an article. But when it comes to common people's interaction between these two countries, India and Pakistan, there are lots of barriers between the common people. Uh, but the common people, they love each other, and it goes beyond these physical and geographical territorial boundaries between India and Pakistan. So I feel uh, uh, Pakistan, and I would love to always visit Pakistan and any other country for that matter. But Pakistan and India, they should, I mean, they should leave aside this bigotry, this mutual hatred, but they should basically build uh, some kind of mutual respect for each other every day, because every day we are basically, the India Pakistan relations is being described on the basis of mutual hate, whether it's cricket, whether it's the government to government connections, whether it's through any other places. But I feel that India Pakistan, it is in the interest of both India and Pakistan to have a mutual respect, to basically grow together or to fall together. So I think we need to basically build this connectedness and to talk more often and more regularly between these two countries. And the people in the power, they have basically failed us. And I think it is we, not only the educational platforms or this kind of collaborative frameworks like SARIM and others, they can do a lot in terms of connecting both the minds on so-called geographically drawn territories of both sides.
Last not but the least, what are your thoughts on rising wave of Dalit aggression in politics, media, cinema, literature, and music, particularly among young people?
Okay, this has been very. I mean, it's great to witness this. Basically, the way there is a wave of young among the Dalit youths. Those are basically now very aggressive in advocating their opinions, and to tell the hegemonic, to basically deconstruct the hegemonic narratives, and and of course uh, uh, and their desire to come to politics, their desire to basically for social justice, and advocating that purpose very aggressively in social media, on the roads, and in spaces across the world. So wherever they are. So I feel that this again is a very important moment in the history of India and in the history of the world, that Dalits today are rising, and they are rising in a very humane way, in a very ethical, in a very democratic way, to democratize various spaces. Those are otherwise very, very hegemonic and exclusive spaces for upper castes. And this will be laying the foundation stone for a uh, for a better democratic future.
I hope we can see the new room of improvement in this new year for around the world. Thank you, Subhajit, for joining us for today's interview. Thank you.